Welcome back to the Jazz Pursuit. In this video, we're going to look at the classic jazz standard Summertime, written by George Gershwin in 1934, originally for the opera Porgy and Bess. Summertime is one of the most recorded jazz standards of all time, so there have been many different versions over the years. In this video, we'll start with the most basic version of the tune, and then build up the layers of complexity once we're confident with the foundations. Before we get into it, make sure you like and subscribe below to stay up to date with new content and releases. Enjoy! So, let's start by looking at the key bits of information. Summertime can be played many different ways, but the original is in 4/4 time and in the key of A minor. The form is simple and made up of just 16 bars, which are usually repeated as there are 2 verses of lyrics. As we've already said, Summertime is in the key of A minor, which is a relative minor of C major. Therefore, there are no sharps or flats in the key signature, and it's made up of just the white notes. For reference, this is known as a natural minor scale. Right, let's get started. So we start on chord 1, which is a chord built off the first note of our key, using the notes of our key. So the root is A, skip a note, and the third is C, skip a note, and the fifth is E. Great, this chord is A minor, and we stay here for the first 4 bars. We then move to chord 4, which is a chord built off the 4th note of our key, D, and again it's built using the notes of our key. So the root is D, skip a note, and the third is F, skip a note, and the fifth is A. This chord is D minor, and we stay here for 2 bars before moving up to chord 5. Again the same process, the root is E, skip a note, and the third is G, skip a note, and the fifth is B. This is E minor, and we also stay here for 2 bars. Cool, so that's half the tune already done. Next, we head back to chord 1, A minor, and stay here for another 4 bars. And now the last harmonic movement that happens is that we go to the relative major, which, as we said earlier, is C major. We can also call this chord 3, and we stay here for 2 bars before going back home to chord 1, A minor, for the last 2 bars and to finish the form. Super! Now, let's quickly recap all that, but with the piano. So we start on chord 1, A minor, and we stay here for the first 4 bars. And then we move to chord 4, D minor, and stay here for 2 bars, before then moving up to chord 5, E minor. We then go back home to chord 1, A minor, and again stay here for 4 bars, before going to the relative major, or chord 3, C major. We stay here for 2 bars, and then go back home to chord 1, A minor, to finish the form. Brilliant! That's the main harmonic areas covered. So now let's take a look at the melody. The melody of Summertime is built almost entirely from the A minor pentatonic scale. This is a 5-note scale that includes the 1st, 3rd, 4th, 5th and 7th notes from our key, A, C, D, E and G. I think of the first 2 lines of the tune as 2 question and answer phrases. We start with a question, rocking between the 5th and 3rd, E and C. And then we answer it with a longer phrase. We start with a turn around the 4th, D, D, C, D, E, before falling down through the notes of our A minor triad, C, A, E. We then have our second question, which is a development of the first question. Rather than just rocking between the 3rd and 5th, C and E, we now enclose the 4th, D, from a scale note either side, E, C, D. We then answer this question with a phrase that has a similar rhythm to our first answer. However, it just rocks between the 3rd and the root, C and A, before landing on the 2nd, B. When we started the melody section, I said that the melody is built almost exclusively using the notes from the A minor pentatonic scale. The 2nd, B, which is the note we just ended the last phrase on, is the only melody note in the whole tune that isn't from our pentatonic scale. Anyway, let's hear what the tune sounds like up to this point. I'm going to play the melody in my right hand and the bass note of each chord in my left hand. Super! And now the good news. The next line is almost a direct repeat of the first line. However, the rhythm of our initial question phrase is slightly different as it fits the lyric, "Oh, your daddy's rich." But our answering phrase is identical to that of the first line, with a turn around the fourth D before heading down through our A minor triad. The harmony now moves to the relative major, C major, and our melody reflects this. We start by rocking between the third and fifth of our C major chord, E and G, before rising up to the root C via the sixth A. We end the melody by falling down through the scale, from the fifth to the root, E, D, C, A. If we then want to repeat the melody, we need to put our first two notes in the final bar, so our repeat marks make sense. Anyway, that's the whole melody covered. I personally often find it easier to internalise melodies by learning the lyrics, so here are the lyrics to the first verse that you can follow as we play through. Again, I'll keep the melody in my right hand and the bass note of each chord in my left hand. Cool, so now we're rocking. We've learnt the melody and the foundations of the harmony, and what we're going to look at now is additional chords that have been added to the tune over the years. So far, all the chords in Summertime are directly in the key of A minor, and now we're going to be looking at some chords that are outside of this tonality. This helps to create more interesting comping and improvising. The first thing we can add are some 5/1 cadences. In short, a 5/1 cadence is a way to add momentum or tension and release to a chord change. Our target point is the 1 chord, and we put the 5 of this chord in front of it to help lead us there. In this context, a 5 chord is always a dominant 7 chord. Sounds tricky, but let me explain. In bar 7, we currently have chord 5 of our key, E minor, and then we change to chord 1, A minor, in bar 9. In this case, A minor is the target point, so this is the 1 chord, and E is the 5 of this chord. So if we tweak this E minor chord to being E dominant 7, also known as E7, this will help propel us towards the 1 chord, A minor. Let's hear the difference. Here's E minor to A minor. And now here's E dominant 7 to A minor. Better, right? The reason for this is that the 3rd and 7th notes in our E7 chord, G sharp and D, make the interval of a tritone, which is a tense interval and wants to resolve inwards to A and C. This is the root and 3rd of our A minor chord. Anyway, that's the theory behind it. Now let's see where else we can put some 5/1 cadences. How about in bar 4, to set up our D minor chord in bar 5? So, we momentarily refer to our D minor chord as chord 1 to work out what the 5 of this is. Upper perfect 5th is A, so our 5 chord is A dominant 7, also known as A7. Cool, and is there anywhere else? How about bar 12 to set up our C chord in bar 13? So, C becomes our 1 chord, and a 5th higher is G, so G7 is our 5 chord. Great, now let's hear the tune again, but with our added 5 chords. Brilliant! That's already sounding more interesting. Another place we can add some additional chords is when the harmony is static for several bars. A prime example of this is the first line and the third line, where we sit on A minor for 3 whole bars. Through the years, there have been many ways to tackle static harmony, and they're mainly driven by the bass player, as they can't just play the same note over and over each bar. I'd say the first approach is to keep the chord the same and let the bass note alternate between the root note and the fifth, so A and E in our case. Here's what that sounds like. I'll keep the A minor chord in my right hand and alternate my left hand between the root and fifth, A and E. Great! So after a while, pianists and guitarists wanted to get in on the fun, rather than just playing the same chord. If our bass note changes to the fifth E, then we can change our chord to E dominant 7. This creates a 5-1 cadence, like before, that propels us back to chord 1, A minor. Here's how that sounds. That sounds good, but after a while it might sound a little monotonous. So we're now getting into the realms of stylistic choice, and you choosing what you think sounds best. Another option is to walk through the scale. So we could start on chord 1, A minor, and then move up to chord 2, B minor, and then move up to the 3rd, C, but play our A minor chord again. This works because C is the 3rd in our A minor chord. Let's hear how that one sounds. Cool. So for now let's use a combination of the two methods. Let's start on our A minor chord, then move up to chord 2 B minor, and then to A minor over the 3rd C, and then let's go to our 5 chord E7, which will take us back to A minor again. Let's hear how that one sounds. Nice, so let's use this little progression at the start of our first and third line. I guess now it's only the second and fourth line that are looking a little bare. But fear not, there are some really cool chords we can add, the second line in particular. So we currently have our E7 chord, which lasts for 2 bars. We're going to push this 1 bar later and set it up with another 5-1 cadence. So if E is the 1 chord, then a fifth higher is B, so B dominant 7 is the 5 chord that leads there. And then we can take this one step further and use a tritone substitution in the bar before our B7 chord. A tritone substitution is where we swap the bass note under a chord to a note that is a tritone away. So, for example, if our chord was G7, we'd swap our bass note to a note that was a tritone away from G. This is D flat, so D flat 7 will be our tritone substitution. This works because the 3rd and 7th of these two chords are the same. The 3rd and 7th of G7 is B and F, and the 3rd and 7th of D flat 7 is F and C flat, which is really a B. Back to summertime, and our dominant chord is B7, so we move our bass note to a note of tritone away from B, which is F, and F7 is our tritone substitution. Let's check it. The 3rd and 7 of our B7 chord is D sharp and A, and then the 3rd and 7th of our F7 chord are A and E flat, which is really the same as D sharp. Cool, so now let's hear the 3rd line with our 2 extra chords. Brilliant, now we're almost there. The last thing is to add a minor 2-5-1 cadence, which is the development of our 5-1 cadence from earlier. For a quick explanation on these, check out the link above. So we're going to put a minor 2-5-1 in bar 14 to set up chord 1 A minor. This helps to strengthen the resolution to chord 1. Our 2 chord is B half diminished and our 5 chord is E7 flat 9. Let's hear how that sounds. Nice, so that's Summertime explained. Now, in your own practice, you'll have to look at how you want to arrange it. I like to think of it in 3 parts. We've got the melody at the top of our right hand, and then we've got the bass note of each chord at the bottom of our left hand. Then, in the middle is where we put the most important notes from the chords. This is usually the 3rd and 7th, so have a little go at that. I hope you found the video interesting, and do check out our Patreon page, linked below, where there are PDF handouts for all our videos, which you can download and take straight into the practice room. Anyway, happy practicing!